Welcome to Socialism for All. This is S4A Livestream number 124 being recorded on January 2nd, 2025. I am joined here at twitch.tv/socialismS4A by 34 people in the chat, so welcome to everybody in the chat. The last time that we did a stream was about 2 months ago, right before the election. And, you know, it's like from a communist perspective, everybody wants to talk about the election because, you know, that's about as far as into politics as many people get. And so everybody, you know, wants to read the tea leaves about what it means and everything, you know, and we had discussions at that time about the state of the U.S. left and how not organized it is. And I was saying how, you know, we don't even have like a really organized social democratic left, much less a communist one. So, you know, and the example I used is the fourth largest political party in the U.S. is the Green Party. So I think the Democratic Party is the largest party, then the Republican Party, and both of those have like 40 or 50 million members. And then the Libertarian Party, which is really a crypto-fascist. It's another neoliberal party, basically. It's like a little bit more socially permissive, a little bit, than the Republicans. But, you know, basically another far-right party that just has been for, like, legalizing cannabis historically more than the Republicans. I mean, if you go back into the history of the Libertarian Party, back to the, like, 70s, you know, and then beyond that in the 60s, people calling themselves libertarians and sort of agitating for the formation of a party. I mean, there was some real kooks and, like, you know, kind of interesting individuals. Today, that's all pretty much just homogenized into a far-right, you know, extreme neoliberal party, no social safety net, hyper-capitalism, you know, just typical right-wing stuff. And actually, I'm not sure how many, off the top of my head, how many members the Libertarian Party has, but it's a lot smaller than the Republican or Democratic Party. And then fourth is the Green Party. And, you know, it's not very organized. You know, I think that the official count is something like 500,000, little over 500,000. And that's tough to register because the Green Party is not currently a mass membership party, in that it doesn't just directly take, you know, dues from members and then counts the membership. It's different in every state. Some states, it's like you can register to vote through the state, you know, like when you register to vote as a Green, but that's not available in every party. So it's a really incomplete count. Anyway, the point is, it's, you know, that's the sort of largest sort of mainstream left option. And as a communist, we would have many criticisms of the Green Party, not a Marxist party, like right off the bat. But I mean, as far as like a mainstream left option, that is sort of the biggest thing you got, and it's very, very small. So, you know, the task remains for communists to form the kind of vanguard party that we need. On the channel, our last reading was from Michael McCreary. That was posted on New Year's Eve, which was, I believe it was called Destroy the Old to Build the New. And that was from 60 years ago, November 1963. And that was written by a UK anti-revisionist Marxist-Leninist who was, you know, complaining about the Communist Party of Great Britain and how its program, The British Road to Socialism, was revisionist and explicitly called for the peaceful parliamentary road to socialism. And in that piece, he did a great job of breaking down why that's not a thing that's going to happen. And, you know, like, if you got to the point where there was a revolutionary crisis or like a revolutionary moment in British society, and then, you know, you started calling for a general election, like how much it would break the momentum and how much of a chance it would give the capitalists to regroup and like mount an offensive in that moment. So anyway, very good job of explaining why that's not a thing that would happen. And then, of course, you know, there's the example of Allende in Chile. And we have a very good audiobook from Enver Hoxha, anti-revisionist, Marxist-Leninist, called The Tragic Events in Chile. And, you know, just a lot of points in that about the peaceful parliamentary road, which was being promoted by the CPSU, Communist Party of the Soviet Union, at that time. And so, you know, this is, to me, World War II had, obviously the Axis was defeated, But I feel like in the long run, they kind of ended up winning because to me, it seems like it threw the communist movement into such disarray. The Popular Front strategy that was emerged in the 1930s in the Comintern under the leadership of Dimitrov, who is widely cited as like, this exemplary communist. And there's a lot of more critical things I've been reading about Dimitrov, and I think we'll do more about that on the channel, as I mentioned in that last audiobook. But yeah, I mean, through the 40s, then you get Browderism in the US, and, into the 50s, you get the British Road to Socialism in the CPGB, and then you get Khrushchev in the Soviet Union, and all of this kind of class collaborationist stuff, which is permissible under sort of more extreme circumstances, but the more the proletarian movement comes into its own, the less that's really a need, and then the more you focus on that, the less you're looking at revolution. So anyway, just so many problems, it seems to me, arose. And of course, the disbanding of the Comintern in 1943, which reasons were given for, but I think it was more of a concession to the US and UK imperialists. And I mean, among other things, there's a theory by Bill Bland, UK anti-revisionist, that the USSR under Stalin let the Comintern go because it was being taken over by revisionists. So we'll explore a number of those theories. Actually, the McCreary reading was suggested by a patron. It was very good. I really enjoyed reading it. And there's another reading we're going to do. And then out of things that are coming up in the comments, there's a number of other readings that this topic seems to have prompted, whether as people had questions about things or other people suggested good, relevant readings on the same topic. But anyway, as I was saying, the last stream was around the time of the elections. And, this kind of question of like, what does it take for the U.S. left to kick into gear? I, for one, would love to see with the union movement at a 60-year low, really like a century low in terms of its general activity. I'd love to see the overall activity level, rise in terms of people just involved in even basic, labor union struggles. Ultimately, a communist vanguard must be formed. I don't believe we have that right now. As McCreary was saying, in the 60s, there was a need to form a vanguard party in the UK because you had the CPGB, but it was built up around revisionist, reformist leadership. CPUSA had a lot of echoes of what was going on in the CPGB at that time in the CPUSA today. And then, the problem is the various groups that have come out, most of them claiming to be, we're the new vanguard party that's going to replace the revisionist CPUSA, is things like PCUSA, which turns out to just be a NazBol party, like, actual fascists, Duganists, things like that. And then the more recent AC, in quotes, P, American, quote, Communist Party. Basically the same thing, actually, with some people such as Chris Halali from the PCUSA. So really just kind of recycling that whole NazBol right-wing trope. Although, honestly, if you're on Twitter, which I don't recommend, the A quote CP is going to seem a lot bigger than it is. You log off of Twitter, it's like they don't exist, more or less. I think Jackson Hinkle is kind of like one of the only people affiliated with that who, has much of a presence at all outside of that. So I think sometimes, people comment on it a little bit more than it merits. But yeah, we need the Vanguard Party. People ask me, are you starting a party? No, this is a YouTube channel. I mean, I'm a guy who's, my time budget as far as doing things related to current events, politics, studying communism is more or less 100% invested in just like what you see me doing with the channel on YouTube and with related, the Spotify. I mean, there's a number of mirrors of the videos on YouTube, Patreon, Spotify, SoundCloud in audio only form, Substack. We're posting on Substack now. And then all the other things, Bluesky and Twitter and Mastodon and Medium and all that stuff. It's like that takes pretty much all my time, forming a party. I also feel like there's a lot of things I would need to study and learn before I'd be in a position to do that. So, I mean, the earliest you would probably see, if I was ever to do that, and I'm not saying that that's likely, but that is like minimum 3 to 5 years away, minimum. But again, that's not something that strikes me as like I should really do that someday. You know what I mean? It's like we all have our talents. I see myself not as somebody who just wakes up in the morning thinking about communism, goes to bed at night thinking about it. I mean, there's a number of points during the day where I think about it, but to be a Lenin or somebody who's just churning out book after book after book, per year, I just don't think I'm going to be that person. No doubt, if something is started, it's something I could probably contribute to, and be maybe like a second tier contributor, but it is what it is. But I don't know where that's going to come from. Ultimately, we do need a vanguard, that isn't weighed down by reformism, emerging in all of the imperialist countries. And I think that as a more serious crisis emerges, that becomes more likely. But dedicated efforts have to be done to fight off the reformism, the entry of bourgeois ideas into the communist vanguard, which is called revisionism. And I don't know, in the meantime, it seems like the masses haven't entirely become willing yet to stop supporting capitalism. That will happen at some point, particularly as capitalism, has, like, if we had a major crisis in 2008, capitalism lost a lot of popular support. Like, oh, you said that this wasn't going to happen anymore, but then I lost my house, or a close family member lost their house. Okay, well, there was a, quote, recovery after 2008, 2009. Of course, it was very uneven, very unequal, as everything is under capitalism. In the Obama years, we had the quote-unquote recovery, where things went back to quote-unquote normal. But really, the average working person didn't experience much of a recovery. That went mostly to the top 1 to 10%. And meanwhile, the rest of us, have a housing crisis to deal with, which started emerging about 5 or 6 years ago. Prices started getting really high again after like 2017. And then with the pandemic, they just, took a quantum leap, even worse. So we have a housing crisis, homelessness crisis. Homelessness went up, I think, 18% last year. Yet, obviously, the Republicans aren't talking about it. The Democrats really aren't talking about it either. So there's not much mention of this. And then, Medicare for all. That was a huge debate when Obama came in. And, keep in mind, it's 16 years ago. So it's just wild how the capitalist class, the ruling class of this country, just lets things go on and on and on. And, thinking what? They're going to go away? Obviously not. Obama then, of course, instead of doing Medicare for all, they did like a right-wing healthcare plan. The Republicans later get in under Trump and start sabotaging even that, where, you don't have a penalty for not doing the personal mandate. Ultimately, what you want with healthcare is everyone in the same, what is called risk pool. So that's like if you have an insurance plan, what you don't want is all sick people, or, people using lots of services in the risk pool, because then they're going to be using more than they're paying in. So you need sick people and healthy people to be in the same pool, so that the people who aren't using services are paying in, and it averages out, where those who do wind up using a lot of services are in a pool where, they're not the sort of norm, and it's more of an outlier. I mean, it's something you can expect because people have health emergencies at any age. And then particularly as people get older, they tend to need a lot more health care. Now, I mean, as far as general ongoing wellness, the U.S. has a terrible diet, is pretty bad about exercising. And there could be a lot more public health efforts to change the culture around that, and even just do messaging. Public health in this country is pretty much a joke, though, as we saw during the pandemic. And that was during something that, was pretty much considered non-controversial, infectious disease. And basically the narrative for some time now in public health is like the era of infectious disease has more or less been conquered between, refrigeration, sanitation, vaccination, a variety of things. The major infectious diseases are like not as much of a, with certain exceptions like HIV, and other various crises that have emerged here and there. But like overall, many of the historical infectious diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries, if not millennia, have been beaten back significantly to where they're like, some have been eradicated. So, there was talk about the end of the era of infectious disease and then managing more like chronic or lifestyle disease, like heart disease, things like that, that is caused by diet, lifestyle, like smoking and various lung diseases. And, more of a focus on that. Then you get a reemergence through COVID of infectious disease. And they don't even handle that properly, you know. So public health, kind of a joke. Point being, when people get into older age, I mean, yeah, everybody's going to need more services because, people's bodies are just, as you age, your body tends not to heal as thoroughly. You become more frail, etc. There's ways to, everybody dies, but there's ways to age more gracefully into your later years of life so that you're not on 20 prescriptions and barely able to walk and, stuff like that, that would be alleviated by people, again, lifestyle things, diet, stretching, things like Tai Chi have been proven to prevent falls in elderly people, which can be a major source of, big turns for the worse in terms of like catastrophic health outcomes. So there's a lot more that we could be doing. The U.S. healthcare system is just kind of a mess. And so, you had the big push when Obama came in those first few years. We got the ACA. Then even the personal mandate, that was how they tried to get everybody in the same risk pool, was by you had to pay a penalty if you didn't voluntarily enter the risk pool. Then the Republicans even undid that, which was not a good system. Like, people would wind up, as they say, with a healthcare bill, but no healthcare. So you had people paying in, and it still didn't seem like a good deal. You could save so much cost by cutting out the private sector in terms of the administration. Medicare for all. I mean, like the current Medicare system is like 3% in terms of the cost compared to the private sector. Private health insurance administration or medical insurance administration is significantly, like a bigger chunk of the cost. And they're like a mafia, and they don't want to be cut out of the picture because you're talking about trillions, hundreds of trillions in profit. You look at what the average per capita per person cost in the U.S. is compared to many other comparably industrialized countries, and it's at least double, if not triple or quadruple the cost per person with worse health outcomes. So U.S. is paying a lot more per person for much worse outcomes, and that is systemic. It's partly all of the middlemen and parasites in the system that could be cut out. It's also partly health culture in the U.S. is terrible, which could be improved by a better public health system in the U.S., but that is sabotaged, again, as the COVID pandemic showed. But then, so amidst all this, and I've been noticing there's since the election, isn't just that we haven't streamed, obviously, but it seems like there's been a sort of stillness in the air. For me, going on social media, the comments on the YouTube page, it seems like there's been a sort of pause. Trump got reelected. Who the fuck wanted Trump to get reelected? I mean, honestly, it's such an amazing moment where the Democrats couldn't even fight off a Trump who had lost the election once, got in, had a terrible presidency, lost the election, and then came back to, try again. And they couldn't even fight that off. They were running Joe Biden up until the summer, couldn't put a sentence together. They ran Kamala without a primary. She had very little popular support. I mean, she got 0 delegates in 2020. Very bad candidate, very arrogant. And of course, they're just in this closed bubble of political advisors who they keep hiring, and keep telling them nonsense. The capitalist class overall in the U.S., as represented by both of these parties, is not interested in change, and they're fighting it tooth and nail. So then what happens? People, it's not like people just stop needing medical care, and you still get the horror stories, even in the era of the ACA or Obamacare. Although it has, provided some protection against medical bankruptcy, it's like, catastrophic bankruptcy insurance. People still are getting, $8,000, $10,000 medical bills. The insurance isn't covering it, etc. Um, you know, and then there is this assassination in public of the United Healthcare CEO, and people kind of are going nuts over it. There was a lot of support for that action, which, as I've been saying on the channel, I mean, I share things related to that because it has a ton of popular support, but you have to remind people to organize. As I was saying, like, one lone shooter, what's the outcome? One dead CEO. That's not systemic change. But one lone shooter equals one dead CEO. An organized working class equals whatever we want. No more CEOs. If that's what you want, you can get it. So, saying, okay, I see that you're excited about this, and no doubt you are oppressed by the medical system in the United States, for sure. That is entirely valid. You need to affirm that. You need to validate that. Otherwise, you're just not going to, people aren't going to trust you, politically. And absolutely, that's valid. People are super oppressed by the medical system in this country. It's a terrifying thing to get sick in the United States. To even need an ambulance ride to the nearest medical facility, terrifying. You could end up with like a $5,000, $10,000 charge after that. I mean, it sounds to people in countries that have some kind of national insurance, which the United States is the only country, at least among more advanced industrialized countries, but really, like, I'd say the upper 50% of industrialized countries, the only one that does not negotiate its medical budget, overall healthcare budget on an annual basis on behalf of the people in the country. And so you get this free-for-all, much more expensive system because the costs are not negotiated at the beginning of the year. So, you need that at a minimum. It is a terrifying thing to get sick in this country. That's entirely valid. At the same time, one lone guy, though it may be something that gives you some glimmer of hope, that glimmer of hope, you got to follow up on that with organizing. And that's really the missing ingredient here. So, you like that, wait till you see what we can do as an organized class. And to a certain extent, the proletariat, the working class, doesn't really become a class, doesn't really become solidified without the leadership of a party, to represent it. So that's like a key missing step. Closest thing we got, like I said, on any kind of widespread basis is not very widespread. You got like the Green Party as a kind of left populist party with some socialist elements in its left wing. And, we got to do a lot more than that. And we need a communist vanguard. But again, these shitty like CPUSA and then more like the Marxist PSL, these are not the vanguard party that we need. Like, we need to do better than that. I don't know how and when that's going to happen. But yeah. So anyway, as I was saying, since the election, seems to me like there's a kind of lull. Like, people just don't even know. It's like Trump got elected. People are just like, now what? What the fuck do we do? And then again, 3 shots ring out. What was it? Denied, defend, depose. And people are like, yeah, this is going to be a crazy year. And I bet it is. But if you really want to put an end to the cycle of madness, we must organize. And, so we need that vanguard leadership. Okay, so I actually have a lot of articles that I've been, gathering for the last couple of months. However, I know if I haven't streamed in a while, there's so much chat. So today is basically to vent the chat. I have about an hour and a half for you today. And so we'll get through that, initial like venting of the pressure valve, do the chat explosion, and then we'll do a stream next week where, there will be some reasonable chance of actually getting into some news stories and things like that. So anyway, going through the chat now, see 57 people in the chat. Welcome to everybody who came in after we got started. And let's see. So, Happy New Year, a lot of people are saying. And yeah, to me, there were a lot of bad things happening in the world in 2024. I certainly had a lot of challenges. I'd say For me personally, it ended on a good note, and I feel confident starting this year. So hopefully everybody is amid your struggles finding, something to lean on, or some, source of support as you start this coming year. So, and if not, I hope that you are able to find it and connect with it soon. So we got a comment. The parallels to 1929 are actually terrifying. Yeah, so we've been talking about this as a running thread, and in one of the coming streams, I will be doing more of an update on the economic situation. A lot of the BRICS currencies are actually kind of in sharp decline right now, so we'll see where that heads. But there have been a lot of indicators of an incoming major recession for a while. As we've discussed, the bond yield inversion curve in sort of like finance with S4A streams that we've been doing over the last year. So yeah, when the short-term yields are up over the long-term yields, the bond yield inversion is not a good sign. What it generally means is like a lack of investor confidence in the future, and the longer it stays inverted, then after it uninverts, usually the more severe the economic crash is. This is a feature of capitalism. It doesn't exist in socialism because of the planned economy and moving away from, things like this kind of investing on a private basis. But in capitalism, this is one of the things that seems to be true. The longer you get, it's one of the indicators, the longer you get that inverted yield curve after it uninverts, which it did just like 3 months ago. I think it was back in early September, so 3 or 4 months ago. The bond yield curve uninverted. And it's usually around this time, like in the next few months, that you would start seeing the fallout from that. And yeah, I agree that there are a lot of parallels to 1929. The length of time that the curve was inverted for was comparable to 2008 and 74 and 1929. So it's very concerning, that among many other indicators, although that is a major one. Savings for, quote, lower income workers in America, which is like 2/3 of the country, are basically non-existent, according to Moody's. And now we are seeing a sharp pickup in credit card delinquencies, as well as bankruptcies and defaults. The next job report comes in next Friday as well. And I just want to say about the jobs report, you got to be careful because there seems to be kind of a conscious effort to mislead people about the state of the economy, in that a lot of what happened in 2024 was they come out with a glowing jobs report and then a couple of months later sharply revise it downwards after, it's like you get one headline on the front page, and then like a week later, buried on page, B19, there's a retraction that nobody ever, like really sees. So be careful when they come out and say like, jobs report is excellent. I mean, a lot of the jobs numbers, comparing like the establishment survey to the household survey, the numbers don't always match. And then you get these downward revisions, seems to be like a big trend through the past year. So, and then looking also outside of the U.S. to China, to India. India had some major industrial declines in terms of the level of activity and numbers of orders of things. So, I don't know, we'll see. You're doing a great job with Capital. Very important work. Thank you. Yeah, so we are reading Capital Volume 1. Finished Chapter 3, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering that Chapter 1 was a 2.5-hour audiobook, and the 3 sections of Chapter 3 put together were also 2.5 hours, and then Chapter 2 was also, half an hour, and the prefaces were almost an hour. I mean, we're up to like 6.5 hours, something like that, of Capital already. And there's over 30 chapters. A lot of the subsequent chapters are 20 or 30-minute chapters. So once we get into those, it'll be a lot more rapid fire. But in chapters 1 and 3 in particular, there's like a lot of really fundamental concepts that have to be explained at length. Use value, exchange value, value in general, which is closely tied with exchange value but isn't the same. And we included a note as well on that. Commodity fetishism. Yeah, so there's a lot that gets laid out. the commodity cycle, C to M to C. Haven't quite gotten in full into M to C to M prime, but which is, the growth of capital. But anyway, we'll be going into that. And somebody was like, why hasn't this been tackled until now? Okay, thank you, person who's never given a dime to the channel. I welcome your insistent demands. The reason that we haven't done capital on the channel up to this point is this channel basically was based around something called the Basic Marxism-Leninism Study Guide that we made many references to, and capital is the 25th out of 26 entries in that playlist. So we did 24 earlier and many, many side readings. So now we're doing capital, you fucking asshole. Like, honestly, some of the comments, I'm so fucking over so many of the comments. There's probably about 500-600 people I'm actually doing this channel for at this point. The rest of people coming in on the comments, I swear to God, like, just fucking, but, whatever. I mentioned that there was sort of more of a lull in the comments since the election. There's very few of you I'm actually doing this channel for. Obviously the patrons, and you know what, while I'm saying that, let's put up our thank you screen for the patrons and Buy Me a Coffee supporters. Dig that up. And if you'd like to get your name on the screen here, patreon.com/socialismforall or buymeacoffee.com/socialismforall. You can do a recurring payment on either site, and then Buy Me a Coffee is a little bit more set up for one-time donations if you want to kick in like $20 or something. That is available there. But yeah, honestly, if you like this channel, really thank the patrons, because there have been many, many unrewarding moments in the running of this channel, particularly after my initial enthusiasm of like, hey, I've got a YouTube channel and it's growing. As that started to, like, the novelty wore off of like, hey, we're doing a channel. Boy, are there a lot of assholes out there. And it's part of, there's also a lot of non-assholes, but moderating the comments and just trimming it down so that not everybody has to listen to the trolls and the just angry bad faith commenters, or people who leave absolutely no room for. Okay, here's another example. I shared a meme. I shared an image of some video game characters around a bonfire and holding a candle. And people were like, AI art, dude, really? I didn't make the meme. I saw it. I thought it was a really good meme, and I shared it. Somebody used AI to make it. But after that point, it was already made. Whatever, like, small lake was dehydrated in order to, like, use the AI to make the thing was already done. The meme is there. It was very good. It was actually one of the highest performing images I've ever shared on the channel in the community tab on the YouTube. Just these, if that's your best contribution to the channel, is to just go in there and you just complain in the comment about that. Just I don't want you here. Just go away. I don't fucking need that. I don't need it. But like I said, if you like this channel, thank a patron and consider becoming one yourself, because honestly, it's one of the things really keeping the channel going at this point, because I'd say the overwhelming majority of the audience has been so unpleasant to deal with that it's been a real grind. It's been a real slog. So big thanks to the patrons. And like I said, there's a few hundred people. We're almost up to 29,000 subscribers. Really, there's just a few hundred people I'm actually doing this channel for. And the rest of you can eat shit. So you can quote me on that. All right. But thank you for the recognition on capital there. Las Vegas's housing market and San Francisco too just had the worst sales since the Great Recession, and it's worsening. Yeah, another place where this is flipping is Florida, and that's driven in part by the hurricanes and the insurance costs going up, the homeowners insurance going up. But it's other things too, just a lot of the Airbnb people who had bought up a lot of stock. Like most housing stock among investors is held by people who own like 10, properties. It's smaller, like mom and pop, investors who are not big corporate chains. In other words, they're are Wall Street investors that, do own hundreds and thousands of rental properties, or which they may be putting them up for rent, but when you're trying to rent a place out at 3,000 or 4,000 a month, I mean, if anybody could afford that, they would just buy a house. I don't. They're generally not very successful at renting them out at those rates because who the fuck has the kind of money to do that? So, they bought up these houses, they're trying to rent them out, and then they wind up, doing a 25-30% price cut and then just selling them like at a loss. So that's what's been happening for the last few years. Like, no, the housing market is not going to go up forever. It goes in waves, and it's just amazing how many people get involved as investors without understanding basics like that. But anyway, Florida is a place where the housing crash is starting. And even if you go back to 2008, we think of 2008 as a national crash, but it was driven regionally. There were certain markets that were way more impacted, like Las Vegas, I think, declined in 2008 about 80%, whereas some states in the Northeast, for example, where there's been a much more steady housing market, maybe declined 15% only. So, yeah, expect that to be regional. There's been a lot of new building in Texas, for example, and so the prices, that's probably after Florida, one of the other places where the crash will be, really be beginning, and a major early driver of whatever else ripples out nationally. Anyway, U.S. pending home sales are 2.2%, but were originally forecast to be 0.8%. Office CMBS delinquency rate higher than the oil bust, rapidly spiking and on the brink of reaching 2008 levels. Chicago PMI also plummeted to 36.9 in December, which is the worst since COVID. So, I mean, this is the year. We saw the inverted yield curve for the past 2 years. Like I said, I think it was early September it uninverted, and it's within about 4 to 6 months of the uninversion that usually the recession really kicks in. That can vary, but yeah, we would be looking for that this year. There's also a lot of corporate debt up for renewal this year and next year that won't be possible at the higher rates, so they're going to start laying off workers, cutting costs in order that they can refinance their debt, or they just go out of business, in which case people lose their jobs too. And the job loss, that's like probably the key thing about, what makes a recession is the layoffs and unemployment. Something else to note, U.S. credit card write-offs in delinquent loans spiked 50% year over year to $46 billion, and credit card defaults have reached levels not seen, or at least not exceeded, since 2008. It's approaching that 2008 peak. So yeah, this is the year. As I was saying, it historically, in relation to the start of the yield curve inversion, it was a new record for the stock market not to have crashed back in August. So that crash still hasn't really happened. So just when it hits, look out. Not that you all have stocks. That's really not the point. It's about the capitalist economy destroying capital and people losing jobs in that process. That's what we're talking about, is a decline in economic activity. And I mean, this is discussed even in the Communist Manifesto and Principles of Communism, the cyclical nature of the business cycle, the boom and bust cycle. Capitalism has crises of overproduction, and it goes through things where it has to destroy capital and, curtail production and basically create artificial scarcity again, and then resume. When socialism takes over following a proletarian revolution, the level of productivity has to go way up to support socialism, and it has to actually vastly exceed even the boom periods of capitalism. So, if you want a world of actual plenty and post-scarcity, I mean, capitalism is deliberately maintaining scarcity artificially at this point. Natural scarcity has been overcome by modern industrial methods. We have the production capacity to overcome scarcity. It could really be a thing of the past, but for capitalism, because they are hooked into the profit motive, they have to keep cyclically recreating it in order to keep profits up and to keep their system intact and to keep their class rule over society and all the wealth and privileges that come with that at your expense. All right. It's 2:30 a.m. here in India. Red salute to you in India. Have I come across future infinitive on social media, mostly on TikTok? They've been covering AI developments from an interesting angle. No, I don't watch much TikTok, honestly. I have to say YouTube is where I watch more of my videos, but it is becoming unusable. The front page, you can keep reloading the front page of YouTube, and it just keeps showing you the same videos, and including stuff you've already watched. And it's like, no, I don't need to watch the news 3 times, thank you. It's like broken. There will be the occasional day, maybe once every 3 weeks, where the front page of YouTube is actually different and good, and then it goes right back to the same old stale videos that, no, I don't want to watch anymore. It's crazy. I've been told one of the videos that YouTube keeps promoting from this channel is the Forward with Bernie, should the U.S. left trust Bernie Sanders? And it's like that video's from, 3 or 4 months ago, and it's like, I think everybody who wanted to see that video has seen it. Let's move the fuck on. Meanwhile, Capital, I don't think, is getting promoted very much. It's, well, and that's another thing, too. When I was expressing some disdain for the audience earlier, I know that a lot of people were like, let's go with Chapter 1 of Capital, and Chapter 1 of Capital got 3,000 views. Okay, great. Kudos to everybody for listening to that. And then Chapter 2 got 800 views. So all these people have, no problem jumping into the comments, and telling me how to do everything down to like tying my, I'm tying my shoes wrong. But at the same time, they're not actually listening to fundamental texts. So it's like, I don't know, maybe remove the beam from thine own eye, but whatever. Anyway, no, I have not seen that, although I have been watching various AI developments. And yes, it continues to be frightening. I also just find it amusing. Like, I share one, AI image that was made by somebody else. I just happen to think it was a particularly good message. And people are like, oh my God, really AI? We were covering AI extinction stuff and being derided for it like a year and a half ago when that was not a cool thing to be doing. So it's just wild. People will find anything to fucking complain about, and it's all just masturbation. You're all just sitting there jerking yourselves off, just like dumping on somebody trying to do an honest channel, and it's amazing to me. There was a post I saw on Bluesky recently, and I related to. This was posted by, I don't have a screenshot for you, unfortunately, but posted by Micah. Why isn't person I really liked posting anymore? Well, the answer is pretty much always that people tore them to shreds for something they did not remotely deserve being torn to shreds for, and did it over and over until they decided they were happier offline. That's true. I mean, that's super true. People have such unbridled hate online. It's amazing. Now, we're on a mission here, but I gotta say, if you support this channel, just lay off. Learn how to criticize constructively if you have criticism, and maybe don't drop in the middle of, this channel's been going for 5 years. You just came on board and you have no idea what's going on, and then start doing brutal criticisms. I'm sorry, who the fuck are you? Sit down or I'll sit you down. But my God. It gets really, really irritating. Anyway, somebody responding to the economic hardship stuff. My in-laws just lost their house. They used cash for keys to avoid an eviction on their record, but the company used a few small boxes and a dresser to deny them any money from it. Meanwhile, the housing market sucks, so my wife, my daughter, and I had to move in with my grandparents. Yeah, I hear that. It's an increasing trend, is the reply. 49% of all people 20 to 38 years old have been moving back in with or were already living with their parents. Yeah, and we did an article about that, a while back, sometime in mid-2024, about young people now just can't get started on their own in life. I'm a little bit older. I was barely able to make it out back in the 2000s, and have a little bit of like something resembling, more of being able to just have a cheap apartment and like. I mean, I was broke, but I mean, at least I did have a cheap apartment. I had a cheap apartment because I was broke, so I couldn't afford anything more than a cheap apartment. But I had it, and I was able to like have something of a more independent young adult experience. I feel for people who have parents as roommates, particularly if you don't get along that well, and into your 30s. It's just not a situation that this country is really set up for, and it's pretty devastating to people to not be able to get started. The more that this hangs around, though, and like I was saying about having multiple quote once in our lifetimes crashes, you had 2008, probably going to have like a 25, 26 crash, and and of course the stagnation of the last few years, and just the wild inflation and cost of living crisis. And then when that crashes, people start losing their jobs and can't work. But people go through enough decades of that consistently, and people start going, we really need a new system. That will happen. I mean, the goodwill of capitalism is just going to wear thin, and people will start going, we need to do better than this, and we do. Housing prices are also starting to fall again. There's very big oversupply, big deflationary pressures occurring. Well, like I said, that's regional. So there are plenty of markets where prices are still going up. Actually, many. I think the majority are still going up. Like overwhelming majority are still going up. But there's the early signs of big price cuts, and a lot of these wildly overvalued houses are having to actually sell for less in some of the leading markets, but it's far from a national or even major regional crash yet, although that will come eventually. When workers have zero savings left and can no longer pay off their debts, they stop spending, which sets off that deflationary spiral. Yeah, that is definitely part of how it goes. All right. So I think this is about where the stream was starting, catching up with some more comments. The re-education camps are going to have to be absolutely massive after the revolution. Yeah, we're getting started now on those education efforts. After listening to the RP Dutt audiobooks, that would be Fascism and Social Revolution, and reading other books about the Great Depression, and watching documentaries on it, etc., past few years also observing the economy, the amount of similarities I've been seeing are disturbing. You and me both. I know there's still not a ton of info regarding the New Orleans attack, but was anyone else wondering about it? Yeah, I really have no idea. I mean, in the United States, some kind of a false flag attack or psyop or setup is always a possibility. So, I mean, is it always a possibility? Yes. Do we have specific information? I don't. The situation in Serbia is interesting. They had over 100,000 people come out and protest last week. I have not seen that, if you want to send me a link. CPB, Communist Party of Britain, is a complete dogshit party for a multitude of reasons, standing J.K. Rowling because she quote tweeted one of their more turf-tastic posts was the last nail in the coffin for me. Yeah, they call it Turf Island for a reason. It's a really chronic, widespread issue in the UK. I am studying right now. When I finish, should I join a co-op or trade unions? Didn't you say you're in India? I would be really hesitant personally to advise you on what to do because I really just don't know the situation where you are. Okay, George Michael was a member of the CPGB youth wing, but the youth wing enrollment meant an automatic enrollment in the main party. Okay. The negative attention given to the A, quote, CP makes it look bigger than it is. I fully agree. I feel like if any party came out of S4A's channel, it would be created and led by viewers. There's a handful of people I know who really consistently do the reading and suggest readings and have what I would consider intellectually consistent, intelligent comments on it. So, yeah. I mean, you know, McCreary makes the point in that reading that Marx and Engels were the kernel of a vanguard, and there were only two people. And, many other parties started out of very small groups, like the Communist Party of China, also in Vietnam, etc. Like, it starts out of a very small study group. And so that's why we have, discussed writings from the ACB, for example, or, other small groups. And so you never know what is going to break through, but a lot of them don't make it. The ACB, for example, got sued into non-existence by the PCUSA, fucking fascist Duganists. You know that they're really up for communism when they're using the court system to sue a splinter group just for saying mean things about them, which were entirely accurate. So, you know, um, it's been a wild 5 years, but yeah. I recently found the People's School for Marxism-Leninism Studies podcast from PCUSA. They suck. It's BS. No, I haven't considered doing live streams. I mean, I've considered doing live streams on YouTube. I have the infrastructure set up now for Twitch, and I find these streams to be pretty manageable. I feel like if I did a live stream on YouTube, it'd just be kind of like too big and too raucous, and I wouldn't be able to have any kind of a discussion. I saw a post that said, "Why would I want socialized healthcare where I have to pay for everyone else's care when I could have private healthcare where I pay for that and a middleman's 6 to 8 figure salary?" There you go. I mean, no matter what kind of healthcare scheme you're involved in, and I use scheme in the British neutral sense rather than the American pejorative sense, whatever kind of situation, plan, program you're paying into, that's always how it works. You're in a risk pool paying for other people's care. The idea is that then when you need it, they pay for yours. That's how it works. And that's literally how all insurance works, private or national. The benefit of national is everyone's in the same risk pool. So you have the largest possible risk pool. And also fewer administrative costs. Been dealing with FSA reimbursement bullshit. The U.S. Healthcare system sucks. Absolutely. Did I see the Pod Save America episode? No. With the Kamala Harris team where they dissected their failures. It's really dismal but interesting to see how ideologically blinded they were and how they convinced themselves that they nearly won. I'm sorry, they got trounced in every swing state, right? Did they win like one swing state? Maybe. They got destroyed. And by a fucking failed, formerly defeated president. Extremely unpopular right-wing president. I mean, it was a dismal, dismal shit show. People had no confidence in the Democratic Party, and for good reason. For very good reason. And as far as, what another 4 years might have been like, be more gaslighting, manipulation, and lying. Because the whole Bidenomics slogan was basically like, the economy's great, you're just too stupid to realize it. And they might as well have just written that on the lawn signs. And that, I mean, because they said it over and over and over again leading into the election. Like, why do people think the economy's bad? I don't know. Maybe because we can't afford housing. Just a thought, I mean, and many other things. Maybe because wages aren't keeping up. Maybe because there's a massive cost of living crisis and then AI is like, as somebody was saying, welding a speculative bubble onto the system at like a very deep level that like when it goes, it's just going to take everything down with it. Because that's really what's even keeping the stock market up is those big mega cap tech stocks like Nvidia, the chip maker, and then it's the, Facebook, Amazon, Google, those huge tech companies, and AI is like a crucial part of that. What's keeping this speculative bubble afloat? And AI, we know, is, not really, I mean, it has some uses, but it's not so far being monetized in a way that, one of the comparisons I like is the iPhone. When smartphones came out, it's like it's a computer in your pocket with a touch of a button. You can do like anything on it. It'll keep your contacts organized. You can play music on it. You can watch videos. You got the internet. You got finally maps that you don't have to, fold up. like a newspaper from hell and like get out of your glove compartment. I mean, it was an amazing device. Everyone said, "I need that." I mean, they were whether you got one immediately or not, they were highly useful devices that people really saw a lot of value in. They like were highly desirable, and they just could meet a lot of needs. They're a fucking flashlight. They're a ruler. They're a yardstick. Like they can do so many things, and it's just this easy to charge device in your pocket. There's a lot of downsides of smartphones. I don't actually particularly enjoy them, but the fact is, for most people, they're so useful. Everyone needed one. That hasn't been the case with AI. AI is useful for some things, kinda, but it's enormously environmentally costly. There's like literal extinction concerns with like people are, I think, more weirded out by AI than they are enamored with it. And then the out of touch freaks, and looking at you, Sam Altman, who are really pushing this stuff. But it's not just Altman; it's like everybody else. The guy who invented Claude. Every time I see that guy, I'm just like, oh my god, the future of humanity is in this guy's hands. It's like they're a cult. I feel like there's just really powerful cults running, most of the overall situation. These people who like just absolutely are so fixated on some particular goal or idea detached from any countervailing considerations. And anyway, yeah, I think people are more weirded out by AI, and it's just not turning into the new smartphone in the way that it's like revolutionizing everything. Yes, some companies are using it for cost cutting. That's going to keep happening. But it just hasn't been this new must-have thing. Many people are just very, divided on it, and or just weirded out because it's like, robots have been part of sci-fi nightmare, sci-fi horror movies. Not just talking about the Terminator, but in general, robots are creepy. Everybody knows that. And then the sort of uber nerds who are, in this AI cult pushing this stuff. It's like, did you forget people are actually scared of AI? Like, we don't want that. It's too much. You want to be able to turn the device off, not have the device turn you off. And it's crossing that point. So anyway, I mean, it's out there, and it's part of this big speculative bubble that's driving the stock market. But I think that's going to pop too, because it's just not, I think AI is unfortunately probably here to stay. But like the .com bubble 25 years ago, the internet certainly is here to stay. We're communicating via the internet right now. But the amount of speculation in 2000, 2001 versus what it was able to deliver at that time, and the actual impact on society in the very short term at that time when people are still on dial-up, it didn't materialize. So that was speculative. It was a bubble, and it popped, and there was a big crash. And that's, a thing that I think we can expect to see as a likely, driver of whatever pops the bubble that we're currently in. What Luigi allegedly did was adventurism. As far as people desperate for change and being grievously harmed by the system and not seeing that organization pop up, which is a collective decision of the masses to organize or not, I mean, I think especially like post-COVID and everything else, expect more people to snap. I mean, we're in a society that's pushing people to the brink. I mean, how many TV shows and how much popular culture and how many social media posts are about people talking about how they're just barely hanging on, and they're just sort of learning to just pass, like they're not going completely crazy. They're not super depressed. They're not incredibly anxious. That they're not, having obsessive thoughts and just all kinds of other daily mental health challenges, and just under the pressure of the system, the kinds of conditions, the kind of tension that there is now, why wouldn't you expect people to snap, honestly? And as organization grows, which I hope it does, we can see people's desperation being channeled into more long-term productive, constructive efforts. In the short term, I would not be surprised to see more people snap, assuming that, this was just a actual spontaneous event of some individual. But I think for most people who are not, hooked into a lot of activism, it looks pretty bleak out there. And like, you could see where somebody would get that idea, which again is not going to lead in itself to systemic change. I just think it's understandable, and people's suffering should be validated first of all before you come in with the wet blanket about it's adventurism. People don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. If you're not in like year 3 of your Marxism studies, nobody's knowing what the fuck you're talking about. You have to put it in terms people understand, but first of all, validate what people are feeling in the first place. Communists need to get better at taking the existing energy and spinning it toward constructive organizing rather than starting with no, starting with the wet blanket, and then here, let me talk down to you. Don't do that. Don't do that. Take what's there and absorb it. Take what's there and absorb it and transform it. Don't just say no. People who are suffering, as soon as they hear that no, they will walk away, and that's the last you'll hear from them. And that impression may stay with them for a long time. So, you can do both. I boiled it down to one lone shooter equals one dead CEO. I think that speaks for itself. It just doesn't do a whole lot. An organized working class equals, by contrast, anything we want. Okay, well, there you go. You're validating. Obviously, a lot of people are incredibly excited about that. They're like, oh yeah, these people can die. You know what I mean? They're not gods. They bleed just like we do. Our oppressors bleed just like we do. And it's been a while since there was a reminder of that. Okay, but that in and of itself is not anything. You got to organize. And but as a sort of bellwether and a temperature check, yeah, a lot of people are actually super excited about violence against their oppressors. Turns out that's a very popular sentiment. Noted. Now take that, validate it, and spin it towards the higher, more organized, constructive action that we would like to see. Don't start by saying no. You're going to lose people right off the bat. And it's amazing to me how many comments there were like that. You think that's what people want to hear right now? So fucking clueless. So clueless. We need to rebuild the communist movement, and that starts with popularity. Validate people's struggle, but also improve it. But if you don't start with the validation, they're going to move on. They're going to move on. I think Trump will make the incoming economic disaster even worse. You think the guy talking about tariffs, not having any idea what he's talking about, could make the economic situation worse? And yeah, I'm being sarcastic. But yeah, I obviously agree. Will I be covering H5N1 bird flu in any coming streams? Yes. Okay. Here's something you can do. Refer to me in the third person in my chat. I'm reading this, so just assume you're talking to me. The only thing I disagree with S4A on is get to know your local left. What if your local left is filled with cult leader wannabes and grifters? Well, if you don't get to know them, how would you know that? And then, assuming that is the case, then figure out what you are going to do. But if you don't even know that, you're not even in a position to do anything, are you? So that doesn't contradict the idea of getting to know your local left. I got to know them and I regret it. I mean, if you had not gotten to know them, though, you would not be in a position to say anything about them at all. So it's a necessary prerequisite. And the other reason I tell people to get to know what is going on in their local left is that's what I did, and it's why I was able to start a channel where I could intelligently comment on the various trends that exist. Eventually, when enough people have that firsthand experience, we will all be able to come together and go, yeah, I've seen that too, that thing that you're talking about and criticizing. Here's what I think we should do about it. But it may not be immediate. But yeah, if you didn't go out and do that, how the fuck would you even know? You're just trusting somebody else. You go out there, you see what's going on, you make your observations, and then you come up with what do you think needs to happen differently. But if you don't get to know them, you won't have that intelligence. You won't have that information. Done thousands of hours of theory audiobooks. Random ass dude. Why haven't you done Capital? By the way, it's going to take. I kind of. I broke it down of like doing a chapter or two per week. We're going to be doing like June or July. So, I mean, it's a significant time investment. And as it is, the later chapters of Capital are. Let me look. The last chapter or section of Capital I did, chapter 3, section 3, has 498 views. So do you know how much time it takes to do these audiobooks? And then they're getting less than 500 views. And that one's been up since December 24. So over a week. It's gotten less than 500 views. People aren't fucking watching it. And it's not that this channel is about the views. It's not, because I wouldn't be doing, ad-free anti-revisionist Marxism-Leninism. It's just about the fact that, like, people aren't even engaging with it. So it's not like there's that big of a demand to prioritize it. Like, we will do it, we will get through it, and it will be online for those very few people who actually want to read it. But it's like, yeah, I could drop everything in my life and go record the rest of it right now. Nobody's going to fucking listen to it. Because everybody, their bark is bigger than their bite. They sit there and comment, and then it's like you put a few chapters of Capital in front of them. They can't make it past the first fucking chapter. I mean, honestly, that's what happened. Chapter 2 literally dropped from 3,000 views to 800 views. So fuck you. All these people are being so demanding. A, are you even a patron? Are you even supporting this channel in any substantial way? And then even if you are, I mean, it's like, why don't you trust that I have some idea what I'm doing with this channel at this point? You know how many readings I'd like to do, but you know how much time and effort it takes? For every hour of uploaded content, there's like 4 hours of, recording time and editing time and waiting for the video to render, and then, posting it on all the different websites and everything else. It's an enormous effort. So I really, at this point, try to get the most bang for the buck. Yeah, we'll get through it. But, like, people aren't even watching it anyway. So what's the fucking difference? Whereas if I did some video about some kind of gossip, or just went out and opined for a while, that'll get a lot of views. Because you know why? It's not challenging. It doesn't require you to engage intellectually beyond a very superficial level. It doesn't require you to study. It doesn't require you to remember anything. But studying Capital does. And so that's why you see the view count drop way, way off, even on chapter 2. People can't literally make it past the first chapter. But no, they're going to come on and they got an opinion, not just for me, but about you too. You, listening, are either one of these people, or you're encountering them on social media. Whether it's in the YouTube comments, or on Twitter, God forbid you're still on Twitter, or, Bluesky, or wherever you are online, you're running into these people who can't be bothered to study, but they sure want to give you a piece of their mind. And, to still see this to this extent after 5 years, it's, that's just 5 years of me doing this. Obviously, I didn't invent the left. Like, it's been going on for a long time. In fact, the fact, as I've said many times, the fact that nobody, particularly a party, nobody had done something like this before. I mean, Finball is doing it. You needed a Finnish guy to come along. English isn't even his, first language. You needed a Finnish guy to come along and read you fucking theory, because nobody was doing it here. It's crazy. But then somebody does it, and Boyd, you have thoughts about it. Oh my God, save your thoughts. Save your fucking thoughts. I don't want to hear them. AI has been made into a moral issue. It's so annoying to listen to people rant about it. And it's always the douchebags who make the most noise. Yeah, I mean, I don't like AI. I think there's a decent chance it's going to destroy the earth, at which point all of our problems are over, but also so is human existence. I think that AI is a deeply disturbing development. Like I said, that said, sometimes I come across an image, and I don't, I'm also aware of the issue for artists about that AI is basically theft. Like when you ask it to make a picture or a video, it's drawing on other people's work that is uncredited and unpaid. That is valid. At the same time, do not assume that everybody's sharing an image. Like, are you aware of shitposting? Are you aware of like meme sharing? Like, before we even had a channel, S4A was a Facebook page sharing memes. Like, not every meme somebody shares is their own original content. Like, sometimes you're just sharing it because it was a good image. It's just so wild to me the things people like save their fucking outrage for. It's nuts. It's nuts. I thought I had hoped we'd be at a better point by now, and we're just not. Like I said, though, I'm doing this channel for, about 500 to 700 people, and that's it. No matter how high that sub count gets, it's just not really, you know, on the good readings, there's consistently about 1,000 to 2,000 views, and I assume a lot of people are viewing it more than once, or viewing it in parts. There's about like 500-600 people that I'm actually doing this channel for. The rest are just I don't know. They subscribe because they listen to a couple of audiobooks, and that's fine. I'd much rather that they listen to the State and Revolution period than not listening to, even that. But honestly, people need to get over themselves, and there's a lot of liberalism there, for sure. Dried onion versus fresh onion. I tend to use dried onion more in soup because you're already looking to like thicken the soup. So, as far as like onion granules or something, I tend not to use, when it comes to garlic, forms of dried garlic and onion, I stay away from the powder. It's just too clumpy, but granules are good. And so onion granules, garlic granules, I'll use those a lot of times in soup, if I'm making like a big thing of soup versus fresh. Sometimes if you want the onion as an ingredient rather than a flavor, then yes, I will use some kind of chopped or sliced onion, but otherwise it's granules. And yeah, it'll help thicken your soup too. I live in Texas. A house worth 130,000 20 years ago is now 600,000 plus. Not a bubble though. It's definitely not a bubble. It's definitely never coming down, right? Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it is crazy, because that situation is going on across the country. Like the median house price, last I checked, was like $420,000. To afford that, you need a household income of like $110,000. And that is not the median household. The median house price and the median income are not remotely connected. And every jackass putting a house up for sale is thinking that they're going to get $350,000 for it minimum, I mean, things that you can even find in the 250 to 3 range, which for a lot of people is straining their budget in the first place. Although with rent so high, sometimes that's even cheaper than rent. So, to even find a house in the 200 to 300,000 range, a lot of times there's something severely wrong with it. It's either in an area that is not somewhere you would want to live, or it doesn't have, a heating or cooling system. It needs a new septic tank. Like, there's something massively, massively wrong with it where you couldn't even get funding for it. It would have to be like a cash purchase by a house flipper, developer, contractor kind of thing. So, and then the rent is like $2,000 in the US. It's a crisis. And again, Democrats wondering why they lost the election, saying that $2,000 median rent is like things have never been better. That does not land with people who are not in the Blue MAGA cult. So again, you got cults. It's just like a question of like which cult has a larger, base of undead zombies that it is wielding in compared to the other one. Because this is not based on critical thinking. This is not based on genuine sentiments of the masses. This is cult behavior. This is totally uncritical, mindless team sports, or something that is not really connected with people's genuine thoughts, needs, and values. It's people supporting stuff out of such extreme desperation, but it's not. They're having to hold their nose in severe ways to do it. And I think cutting off the oxygen to their brain in the process. The whole South Korea thing, man, did I blank on that one? Yes, I saw the news on South Korea. Yes. The whole thing with the protests and the president, I filed that away as like generally pretty unimportant because it looked like the guy being ousted was like, it looked to me, and I didn't get deeply into it, but it looked to me more like a case of personal corruption. But yeah, I definitely did see that like 2 weeks ago, and I was just like, yeah, it looks like some complete douchebag doing personal corruption. So I didn't. To me, I didn't wind up covering it much because it didn't seem to have major, geopolitical import to me. Future Infinitive has been covering stuff like the pre-published journal articles on AI replication and AI attempts to escape containment and its attempts to act deceptively to escape containment, etc. It's interesting, but aggravates the doomer in me. I mean, keep organizing because we are in a race against doom. We are in a race against extinction. Capitalism as it is will cause extinction. That's just a fact. We have to end it first, and we have to be ready when more people come around to, hopefully snapping out of that denial in large enough numbers to effect a change. But yeah, I mean, there's videos like that on YouTube, not just TikTok. I've been watching those too, about AI acting deceptively to cover its intentions and things like that. Yeah, especially that new model from OpenAI. Is it O3? I don't know. I'm not, I don't follow that. I'm not in that industry, so I don't follow it in the most detailed way. But yeah, I'm excited for Capital. I'm still catching up on the playlist. Been too sick this month to make good pace. Keep masking, folks. I feel like it's futile to even mention it at this point, but keep masking. Literally, I am the only person where I live masking. The only. Like, I have not seen another. Actually, no, I take that back. I've seen, I think, 2, maybe 3 elderly people in the past couple of months, and they were wearing surgical masks, not even N95s. I don't think I've seen a single other person wearing an N95, and I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. It just, the science has been here. We're going to do another COVID stream, updating you, but it's like, it's more just reaffirming what we've known for 3 or 4 years now. Brain damage, liver damage, immune damage. I mean, people's immune systems are getting just torn apart by COVID. It kills T cells. It infects and kills T cells. HIV is the only other virus that just murders your T cells. It's not exactly the same as HIV, but COVID is bad. It's systemic cascading effects. You don't want it, but nobody can be bothered. So, it is what it is. I'm still masking. I don't get sick. So, it is literally now a choice to get sick. You can wear a mask and not get sick, or at least reduce your odds of getting sick way below like 2%. Or you can not mask and have very good odds of getting sick. That is your choice. No, you do not still need a code for a Bluesky account. It's open enrollment. So, and actually Bluesky now, there have been several major waves of people exiting Twitter over the last year. Bluesky is actually pretty active now. If you were using it in 2023 and found it too inactive and dull, literally sometimes you would refresh your feed, and I'd be following, 500 people. You'd refresh your feed and there'd be like nothing new for like an hour, like two new posts in an hour. It's very active now. I'd say comparable to Twitter. So, yeah, get off of Twitter. Go over on Bluesky. We really need more communists. There's a ton of liberals. Not that many right-wingers, which is nice, but there's a lot of liberals. And we need more communists. We need more discussions of communism. And I have to say, I think just, I know the angry comment poster thing. I've done that myself. It's how I started. This channel was an outgrowth of just angry political posts. And I was like, I should start a thing of my own, and did that. I'm just past the point of just screaming at people. I think we need to move into more sustainable and influential posting than just screaming at people. I still see a lot of that. I unfollow it sometimes. I just don't think it's. I get, being outraged and your first year or two just wanting to just like bellow, but yeah, that's not like a recipe for like good long term posting. Anyway, thank you, Qubit. I'm appreciative that you're appreciative of the content. It's what I say to people a lot of time when they thank me for uploading the audiobooks is thank you for taking the time to study. Because if you weren't interested in studying Marxism, you wouldn't be here, and my continuing to upload the audiobooks wouldn't make sense. So thank you for taking the time to study, and may it have may you take that into the class struggle in your area and apply it. As a 36-year-old, I've never moved out of my parents' place. I hear that, and I got to imagine that's very frustrating for people. I mean, I've known people that, for one reason or another, even back in the day, didn't move out of their parents' place, whether it was for like they had, there's like a health issue or there was some other family issue that they were staying there for, and like, yeah, I mean, it was depressing. They were not happy about it, and we're due for a big societal reorganization. That's what we're here to try to help to facilitate. Just getting educated in socialism is so much. Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing at all until like after about 3 years minimum. I feel like I'm coming into having more of a plan for the channel at this point. There's a lot of preliminary stuff to wade through, as well as also just getting oriented to the political environment. Learning what all the different parties in existence are about, which are the more shitty ones, which are the less shitty ones, in which ways are they revisionist, etc. It takes a while just getting the lay of the land, absolutely. And to even be able to identify revisionism, you have to be up to at least like more of an intermediate level of study. Yeah, I mean, living with, grandparents or parents is definitely better than living on the street, no doubt. But it's also just, you expect more in the richest country in the history of the world. I mean, even, not the richest country in the history of the world at this point can sustain, more independence for people who want it. I mean, I know, like, the U.S. culturally, there's, like, a lot more sort of atomization, like, it in various, even European countries, where the U.S. draws a lot of its culture from, it may be more common for people through their 20s to like be living until maybe they find a partner or something like that, but not just necessarily to move out on their own. So, in those cases, there may be more cultural acclimation to it. In the U.S., there isn't, and it's hitting a lot of people with more of a shock. It's not what has been the traditional expectation here. I watched the quality of graduate student writing and presentations get 20% better across the board with the mass adoption of AI for schoolwork. It's conflicting because you'll be left behind if you don't use it at school or work, but online communists admonish you for using it. Yeah, I mean, you can't just make it into like a moral issue. I mean, yeah, it's, as we covered in the beginning, like there's extinction concerns that we may not be able to control it. In the short term, I mean, yeah, it can do pretty amazing stuff. You can, like, ask it any particular question you want. It'll write you a whole Wikipedia article on it. I mean, that is a major technological advance, for sure. That was never possible before. You could just, like, talk to a computer, and it will actually give you a, whole essay on something. Now, that said, it gets stuff wrong. I mean, ChatGPT will tell you straight out, ChatGPT can make mistakes. I've seen it make mistakes. So just blindly copying. I mean, I've seen it make significant mistakes, really significant mistakes, which you then ask it about, and it's like, oh yeah, sorry. Like, what do you mean you're sorry? You're a computer. It's a crazy time we're living in. But even that, I mean, even with some mistakes that you obviously should go over if you're using it, you can't just trust it blindly. But I mean, that is a major technological innovation. It just is kind of one nobody was really asking for, and that people, do have significant concerns about even existing, for sure. But yeah, I could see how it would definitely, improve people's homework. Definitely. My landlord bought cheap paint and painted the outside of the apartment and hired some people to plant some succulents. Now he wants to raise my rent from 1,600 to 2,000. It's wildly unrealistic, like wildly. Landlords need to just stop or be stopped, and it's looking like the latter. For real, get organized. Anti-landlord action now, because landlords add nothing to the economy. They just really drive up prices. They're completely unnecessary. They're not producing anything. That could all be just like the medical insurance we're talking about. Housing could be handled without all these administrative costs and all these profiteering middle steps. But yeah, just hey, let's just jack up the rent 30%. No, you can't. You can't do that. People can't afford that. But like, it became this expectation. It became this expectation among landlords. This just thing. Oh yeah, I'm just entitled to, 2,000 a month for this place that's falling apart, or $2,500 a month. No, you're not. You're not. Like, this is just. But I think as we go into this bubble before the crash, it's like it's a level of just abstraction and disconnection that is going to come crashing down hard. People just don't have the money. People are being squeezed to their absolute limit right now. Do unions host information sessions or in any way promote their cause without having been contacted? How do we increase awareness of what unions offer and how unionization is achieved? That is a huge question. Generally, no, but it should happen more. A lot of unions are not particularly grassroots oriented in that way, and so they're not out there doing that kind of activism. So yeah, you usually do have to contact them or otherwise independently become knowledgeable about the whole union thing, and then go to them rather than them coming to you if you're not already tapped in some way. But it's a well stated question, and we have some union organizing manuals on the channel, which were made by the IWW, which has a lot of problems as a very ideologically anarchist influenced union. The reason that those manuals are good, though, is because they're very DIY, and they're also very direct action oriented rather than like legalistic. Like, they don't rely on teams of lawyers. They rely on you and your comrades building power on the shop floor and just tilting the balance of power away from the bosses towards the workers, and very practical, concrete, hands-on strategies for doing that instead of, having the union brass make decisions for you and everything else. So that, and also actually, somebody was just recommending reading some anti-union, like union busting, anti-union literature. There's a lot of books out there put out by anti-union law firms for employers about how to defeat union efforts, and you should read those too, because it's a literal manual of what you're going to be up against. Let me get the name of one that somebody was just recommending, actually. And it is Labor Relations Institute is the author. The book is Total Victory, Management's Guide to Handling a Union Election. And they said, quote, I would honestly say it's as important a read as the organizing manuals themselves. So there are occasional union conferences and things like that. If you're not, I don't know that these are like general public information sessions. That needs to be more of a thing, though, because unionization ticked up a point or two recently, but it's really at like a century-long low. The private sector is like, 8% unionized or something. I've noticed there's rampant NazBol and revision. And NazBol is short for National Bolshevik. It's like a Nazism, communism hybrid, which obviously is really, in substance, because those are completely contradictory things, it's Nazism in substance with some communist aesthetics. That's what that is. And revisionism on Twitter with people claiming to be Marxist-Leninist. Could this be related to the MAGA-com, quote-unquote MAGA communism stuff? Yes, it is directly related. Twitter is a right-wing cesspool. I mean, it's really not very useful at all. I had my account private for a while after they got rid of blocks. I just the other day unprivated it. Yeah, it's kind of useless. Like, I'll post videos there, but I don't bother reading the feed anymore because it's just bots and right-wingers, and that includes the so-called communists. They're right-wingers too. So, I mean, with some exceptions, but I feel like that site is not usable anymore. But you're absolutely correct. That's a completely accurate observation. And it's bewildering. I didn't really know what to make of that in the first like year of this channel. Toward the end of the first year, I started speaking out against it on the YouTube, and I wasn't really on Twitter. I didn't have like a S4A Twitter account at that point, but even just the existing things like Caleb Maupin and people like that, like Infracell wasn't even going yet at that point. But I was like, what is with all these fucking right wingers claiming to be communists? It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't know that that was a thing. But yes, it is a thing, and we've been combating that. They recently merged into the American quote unquote Communist Party with Jackson Hinkle and Infracell at the head. I'll just point out Infracell's YouTube channel seems to be dying. It isn't growing anymore and like leveled out a while ago. So, yeah. I think that maybe even starting that party was an effort to get the numbers going again for them. But I think people are kind of onto that grift a lot more than they were in the past. And thanks to everybody who contributed to the efforts to slow it down and expose it. So I think it worked overall. You know, there may be still... I don't feel a need at this point to like do any more debunkings. We've already covered that like so many times that I think the existing body of work kind of, you know, covers it. There may be, you know, one or two things like in the future, a year that need to be said about it, but I think it's pretty much cooked at this point. I'm about to start candidacy at my local PSL. I listened to S4A's comments on them, but I still think they will be a good medium for engaging in class struggle in my local area. Multipolarity. Good luck, but, you know, you're going to come up against some really bad positions when it comes to China and Russia, and these are important topics, and you probably won't be able to fight them and get anywhere within the party. And then probably it's a matter of time before you either adopt those beliefs and start running with them and promoting them, as I'm sure there's going to be pressure on you to do, or you say, I've had enough of this fucking bullshit, and you quit. So I guess it's a question of what you get out of it between now and then. But either way, that's going to end in a disappointing outcome for you, I think. Yeah, I see this. There seems to be a knee-jerk reaction in Serbia against the name Communist Party or Labor parties, unfortunately. I think that is found in a lot of the former Eastern Bloc. And, you know, that'll run its course as the, you know, these were revisionist-led countries in the 20th century. As that fades from view, we're going to come back to the same situation, which is, okay, so you went back to capitalism because there was a revisionist kind of communism that was being done in those countries. Okay, so they went back overtly to capitalism. They're post-socialist. Capitalism is not going to last forever. It's going to keep having crises, and it's a matter of time before we come back to the point of, okay, capitalism has to go. And there will be new efforts to do socialism because there are only two possibilities for an advanced industrialized society. Either the capitalists own and operate industry for profit for themselves, or the workers do. There aren't any other major class forces in society. So it's one of those two things. As capitalism breaks down, your only other option is that the workers run society. So anyway, if that's confusing to you, you just haven't studied enough of the literal basics yet. Go back and read Principles of Communism or something like that. Just capitalism was born, it is living, it will die. It just simply cannot go on forever. The falling rate of profit, many other factors, it tends towards a general crisis from which it cannot recover, and will send the, you know, economy into just breakdown and chaos. So it must be replaced by socialism. Must be. It just can't go on forever, running industry on a unplanned for-profit basis. Anyone notice the New York Times' team blaming Hamas for the New Orleans incident? I saw them blaming ISIS because apparently there was some kind of like ISIS flag found at the scene. That's all I've seen. It was like a headline I saw. Kenyan AI workers are being exploited. Yeah, there's been a lot of coverage. And it's not just AI either. It's also comments moderation. but workers in Africa being getting absolute like the brunt of the worst jobs related to IT, such as comments moderation on Facebook, but also doing things related to fixing, correcting, and even pretending to be AI. What was the joke of people saying AI actually stands for like anonymous Indians or something like that? Because there's a lot of companies claiming that their product is AI, but it's actually just somebody in a like a customer service rep in a like call center, computer center in India. They're like it's literally a human, and they're just claiming it's AI. So that's a thing that's happening. As part of the AI gold rush, like people, this mad dash to claim we have an AI product. It's become the new buzzword where if your product is not laden with AI, you're left behind. You're part of the past. You're a dinosaur. So everybody has to claim AI, whether or not they're even using AI in their product. I'm glad I finished college before AI became a thing. Well, you never know. I mean, it'll find a way to intrude back into your life again. The English language was designed by British aristocrats as a form of psychological punishment to be weaponized against the people in the colonies. No, I will not elaborate. I mean, to put it this way, as far as if any language was to become an international language, English has an enormous degree of grammatical exceptions to the rules and oddly pronounced words and things that are not very consistent from like a rules-based grammar perspective. There's other languages that have fewer exceptions and are just a lot more straightforwardly logical, for sure. It's a difficult language. I've seen a lot of PSL types saying doing the wet blanket adventurism thing about the Brian Thompson thing. It just comes off as standoffish, and like at a time when people really need to be encouraged to think a little bit more outside the box as far as their oppression. Again, we need to guide people toward organized action, but just the fact that they've moved past the point of defending the CEOs of these companies, even in an extreme situation like that. I mean, that's an interesting development for sure. If you as a communist can't think of something better to do with that development than wag your finger at it, you're totally doing it wrong. Did you hear about the CEO of Peak Designs? I don't know what that is. Snitched on Luigi. He went on live TV and bragged about helping the police find him. No, I did not see that, but that's yeah, not the most advisable move. Getting Marxists to read Capital Challenge. Difficulty impossible. Finding that one out. Very grateful for S4A. It helped me with mental issues and downtimes. Well, good. As someone who writes and records music, polishing and editing things takes forever. Yeah, no, that is the least fun process. Whatever. If you do any kind of art that results in a recorded product, whether it's drawing, painting, music, whatever. I mean, there's this sort of free-flowing sketching, jamming part, and then there's the polishing, editing part, and boy, are those not the same. And they're very different. But when it comes to recording an audiobook, I mean, I should show a screenshot sometime of just how many I would say it's an average of every sentence and a half is a fresh take. That may surprise some people, but that's why the audiobooks are good quality, is because if there is some kind of flub, or I just didn't emphasize the right word, I stop, manually place the cursor back where it needs to be, and I retake the sentence or half of a sentence or whatever. It's a lot of work, and people take it for granted, and yeah, better fewer but better, absolutely. The Capital videos will do a lot for the few who utilize it. Also, your strict talk makes me a better person. I mean, there's a lot of people online who tell people what they want to hear. I'm not trying to be strict with people for the sake of it. It's just this channel is not in the habit of just telling people what they want to hear. That's how, if you have an ad-based channel and you just need lots and lots of clicks, you can tell people what you want to hear, or what they want to hear, what you think that they want to hear, and that'll keep them coming back, keeps the dopamine flowing. That has never been the point of this channel. It's to be practical, politically useful, and to challenge people more, because people actually need to be challenged in particular ways. As I try to challenge myself. So I'm not trying to put anybody through anything I'm not putting myself through. We do need to become rigorous and disciplined, and but it doesn't mean being an asshole. It means just enforcing standards and being compassionate as far as trying to help people who are striving to reach those standards, and understanding the reasons why people struggle to meet a standard, or helping people accept limitations, and then figure out what is actually within the strengths of their skill set. You need compassion as well, but a lot of people are not striving. They're just armchair critics who are not doing anything for self-betterment, and they're just taking shots, and who cares? Ultimately, who cares? So frustrating, because the reading is exactly what would provide guidance to the dizzy, aimless online leftists. Yeah, you see, I saw a prominent account that I won't name, but has a fair amount of followers on both Twitter and Bluesky. And they were recently, doing the typical complaint. And they have a YouTube channel too, this person. And they were complaining about people saying to read theory. And they're like, oh, I don't have time to read theory. Like, I'm a single mom. Well, you somehow find time, and no doubt being a single mom is a ton of work. Like, not questioning that for a second. What I guess I'm questioning is, well, you do clearly have the time to post lots of stuff that is not informed by theory on YouTube, as well as post on Twitter every 5 minutes. So maybe take some of that time, which you clearly do have, and just spend it, studying some theory, because then when you do go back to make the video, it will be that much higher quality and more worthwhile, and it'll just be more valuable to everyone. So it's just, when people clearly do have the free time that they're spending on other things, attacking the idea of reading theory, I'm sorry, that's so not helpful. That's so not helpful. It's really, really overall harmful, and it just gives shelter to the people who could be studying theory and aren't. And theory in Marxism is not just abstract theory. It's science. So a lot of it's historical. It's informed by history. When you study Marxist theory, you're also studying Marxist history. You're studying the history of the struggle against capitalism. So studying theory is studying practice. They're closely intertwined. And of course, we make criticisms, constructive criticisms of it. That's how science advances. This is social science. And but just saying like, oh, theory bad, that's so lazy. That's so lazy, and it's just encourages really bad habits. And you should strive to overcome that, and disagree with that where you see people posting that. Make critical thinking cool again. I'm not sure it ever was cool, but make it cool for sure. But again, better, fewer, but better. But you won't get the fewer even if the fewer who could rise to being the fewer but better people out there are discouraged from reading theory, then they're discouraged from becoming those better versions, and that's no good. How would AI destroy the Earth? There's about 1,000 videos on this. Go watch one of them. I get that artists want to build a portfolio and would prefer you hire them, but no one's going to commission a fucking meme. Absolutely. When it comes to like, you need illustrations for your book or zine or whatever, like, or video game or whatever you're doing. Yeah, go to like one of the many sites where artists post, put themselves out there for hire. And yeah, spend a few $100 and like get a nice image for the cover, or, title screen or whatever you're doing. But for memes, I mean, we call it shit posting for a reason. These are like shower thoughts that we're setting to an image. Like, give me a break. The very nature of it is recycled images in the first place. Kamala's team on Pod Save America kept on saying, we only had 100 days. Oh my God. There's so many things you could say about that. As if they had to invent an entire campaign strategy from scratch the day Biden opted not to run. And are you telling me that they didn't consider that he might drop out? Yeah. That he was even going to be alive to finish running again? Like, it's so wild. Yeah, it's so wild. This is the only channel I've ever donated to. Great value. Thank you for that. And I see people donating to other channels too. It's usually other channels that I like. Sometimes it isn't. But yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing here is fairly unusual. I know there's a few other channels that are kind of in a similar, I guess, place ideologically and are approaching this whole thing from a similar standpoint with a similar purpose and mission. But yeah, anyway, I appreciate it. My favorite kitchen appliances are my vacuum sealer and my chest freezer. Cook once, eat many. Absolutely. Even in so-called progressive Chicago, I hardly see anyone with masks. Yeah, I think it's just kind of the mask thing is over. But again, you can still wear an N95. You will not get sick. I mean, your individual mask has to work harder when it's the only mask in the crowd. And there's still maybe situations of like extreme super spreader events you would want to avoid. But yeah, I mean, it's still very good protection. Somebody says subscribe to Data Report on YouTube. I do link to Data Report on YouTube, still covering the pandemic. And I think he just got COVID, actually. I don't know how that happened. I hadn't been following it. I just watched one the other day, and I think he was saying he had COVID. What happened? One consolation for my inner doomer is that, in some sense, it's always been the 11th hour. The Battle of Stalingrad was cataclysmic. Vietnam War was cataclysmic. The Long March was cataclysmic. It's always been a battle against near impossible odds, facing down tremendous catastrophes. And historically, we've come out on top so many times. Like, yeah, we're in a really bad period, but the nature of this struggle is things can flip a lot in a relatively short span of time, which is why you've got to just keep up the struggle, keep up the education efforts, keep up the organizing efforts, because you just never know when, things are going to just start happening all of a sudden. I'm still masking, says another commenter. If I do see someone wearing one, it's a baggy blue mask. H5N1 is the next big thing. Bloody eyes is a symptom. Yeah, I will definitely keep masking. I mean, just for COVID in the first place, because when I got COVID, I was extremely sick. I'd rather not go through that again. But also, there's new stuff coming up all the time. H5N1 continues to grow. It hasn't reached breakout levels yet, but there are concerning signs that it is mutating. And we'll cover that in the next stream when we do articles, or it'll be in the next batch of streams where we cover news stories. So, yeah. Where's the line between anti-revisionism and dogmatism? Well, that's actually addressed in the McCreary piece. Dogmatism is when you refuse to budge from an ideological stance in the face of evidence. Anti-revisionism is just refusing to adopt bourgeois positions. So that's the line. And, there's a common excuse for revisionism, which is usually comes out of class collaborationist situations, which, again, in my opinion, should be an extreme last resort, especially if the proletariat is well developed in the country. But it's always risky, even if you have to do it for any reason at all. But yeah, it's a common excuse that it's the creative application of Marxism in particular national cultural conditions. Yeah, be suspicious when you hear that, because sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's a cover for revisionism. I mean, that's something that is done, like, normally. You always have to adapt the principles of Marxism, like, express it in locally understandable language and apply it to, like, locally experienced circumstances. But when you start introducing bourgeois ideas into it, that's not adapting to, things people will get locally. That's just doing capitalism. There's a difference. I use ChatGPT every day at work as a software developer. You can't trust anything it says verbatim without checking. Yeah, I've seen it make huge mistakes, so it's very important to double check it if you do use it. I get Frustrated with ChatGPT inferring, extrapolating, and making really broad-based implications that I know to be wrong anytime I've used it. It descends into me yelling at it for bullshitting me and me trying to bring it back to first principles to get it to acknowledge that it openly lied to me. Yeah. I mean, I've even just tried to have it like summarize stuff, and it can't even really do that well. It'll like say things that like it'll include in the summary things that are not like in the thing you asked it to summarize. It's not very good, honestly. It's good for surface level questions. Once you get deep into a subject, it sucks. Even on surface level stuff, it will say things that are wrong. I mean, it's like asking a very educated random person on the street who's not an expert in that field. Because it is capable of speaking on any subject, you might get the idea that it is expert on that subject, and it just really, really isn't. Even surface level things, I've seen it be completely wrong on. They treat capital like a meme just for the lulz. I think a lot of people treat Marxism-Leninism that way. I mean, just the amount of sheer right-wingers that claim to be Marxist-Leninists. They clearly can't have read anything. They can't, because it just blatantly contradicts what their like joke of a streamer that they follow or whatever is promoting. I quizzed ChatGPT on the differences it saw between Osama bin Laden, an Israeli prime minister and founding member of the terrorist organization called Irgun, and the sheer amount of mealy-mouthed equivocation it gave me was infuriating. I found ChatGPT to be surprisingly pro-socialism. I think it's neutral. Like, I think it's more, like, rational on that question. They may make it be more anti-communist at some point, and it'll say things about, like, common tropes about, like, human rights or whatever, but, because it is, to a certain extent, summarizing the internet. Yeah, I mean, it is fairly, I think, neutral on that, so, yeah. Like, if you ask it, like, how will capitalism end or something like that, it's not going to, like, take a very bold stance, but it definitely will rationally consider the possibility that capitalism will end, which is about 5 steps beyond what you can get your average liberal to do. So yeah, it seems somewhat advanced in that context by comparison. I've been reading Collapse: The Fall of the Soviet Union. If its liberal author is to be believed, Soviet people's envy for Western popular culture was a contributing factor to the USSR's dissolution. Does that sound right to you? I think there was curiosity, and that's discussed in Parenti's Black Shirts and Reds also. One of the theses in Black Shirts and Reds is that the people in the USSR thought they could sort of have it all, like fight against capitalist encirclement and also like have capitalism, like that they could. And I think to a certain extent, even in the US, the same thing was thought. Like there was a certain, and not just the US, but like other, imperialist countries, when there was in like the 30s and 40s, the groundwork of a social safety net. Like in the US, it was the New Deal, but every country had its version of that. When they started doing more social democratic, like safety net programs, welfare capitalism, people kind of, I think, took for granted that stuff would always be there and that it would never be rolled back. And so kind of moved on to other struggles. And then as they moved on to other struggles, those baseline, the bedrock economic rights were eroded, rolled back, taken away. And so people wound up toward the end of the 20th century with nothing. And so it's like, as I was saying when reading Black Shirts and Reds, like, what were they teaching people? I mean, it was clearly very revisionist education, very reformist and like just soft on capitalism education in the USSR toward the end. Because how do you have all these people thinking that you can like have it both ways? You just can't. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that there was definitely curiosity, and could the USSR in some ways have handled that better or come up with more sensible lines about some cultural issues? I think that they could have. That might have been more satisfying to people without completely destroying the underpinnings of a socialist society or a once socialist society. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot there to like dig into. get the EWOC manual PDF on their website. Is this a union organizing thing? I'm guessing the OC stands for Organizing Committee. Unite and Win, a Workplace Organizer's Handbook, EWOC. Oh, okay. I haven't seen this before. Soviets really did want Levi's and shit, but this is overstated because it fits within a liberal end of history narrative about individualism and consumerism. Yeah. Speaking of union organizing, my union, this is from Doug, who posted the thing about being in a yellow union that we posted a while back on the channel, did in a live stream, and then posted as its own clip. My union voted to go on strike. The company finally backed down, but I still ultimately consider it to be a failure because rather than figuring out what we could get my coworkers, instead of figuring out what we could get, my coworkers tried to, quote, be fair to the company. Jesus. No. Being fair to the company that is trying ruthlessly to undermine everything you're doing shows a real naivete, a real lack of class consciousness. Anyway, by making certain concessions, what the fuck do you mean fair? We haven't been treated fair at all in this. Why should we have to give them anything? Yeah, that's an utterly wrong-headed approach. You don't be fair to them. You give an inch and you're going to get steamrolled. That's how it works. It's like, did the people in your union forget what it was like before you mounted this more recent push? Like, be fair. What are you talking about? I noticed that many liberals and anarchists have been judging Marxist-Leninists by Twitter, which I think is the point. Somebody was saying that the point of the American, quote, Communist Party and all that is basically to shitcoat Marxism as capitalism goes into crisis and people will be looking for solutions. That's why I'm trying to help to popularize the term anti-revisionism to delineate, because that is a real trend in Marxism-Leninism, which predates us. And, there's a lot there that, people can learn about Browderism. This isn't the first time really shitty stuff has been introduced in the name of communism. And, although the anti-revisionist movements have never been able to coalesce and rise to great success in the past, we may be able to now. I mean, in fact, history depends on it. So it's important to study the anti-revisionist pushes of the 20th century. I mean, Lenin himself, as I was saying in the most recent file, Lenin was a really strong anti-revisionist. Leninism is anti-revisionism, not just because it's what we're trying to hold to, but I mean, he was fighting revisionism in his time and was a really good example of that. That book, Collapse, de-emphasizes how Gorbachev dismantled the USSR by setting economic forces into motion in favor of the popular Western narrative because it sells copies, unfortunately, but it's still a good study on what happened. They were allowing majority foreign investment in Soviet companies. I mean, okay, you're doing capitalism at that point. On the social media topic, did you have a purging of subs on Patreon the last couple of months? No, I did not. I'm personally not able to sub beyond free on Patreon. What's it telling you? So I have not had a purging, but I did notice that the last month, like just specifically December, I don't think there were any new paid members. I didn't lose anybody, but there weren't any new ones, which was unusual. So can you DM me somewhere or something? Because that would be good to know about. But no, I was actually kind of noticing, I think there was only one or two new, if any, in December, which was very unusual. I can't sub beyond free on Patreon as well. Is it just to my channel? Is it just to S4A, or is it to other channels too? And I really wish somebody had told me this. Where are you trying to subscribe? Also, oh, you know what it might be related to? Are you trying to subscribe through Apple? Because Apple has a thing where they're trying to take a 30% cut. And so I shut it down there. So you have to try to subscribe through something else. Maybe that's it. Let me know. All right. I got to go in a minute here, but let me see. I just started organizing with the local DSA in my area. I know it's got its issues. The main one being the main one being the right and center of DSA still being way too cozy with the Democratic Party, which it has to completely separate from and fight. And how to, but I need to see if or how I'm effective and how to work within an organization, which is exactly why I've been recommending it, especially to people who've never been a member of anything. Now, when you get into a Marxist group, democratic centralism is different than what DSA uses, but still just basic group dynamics is a start, and just learning how to work with other people in a non-school, non-work environment is important. And a lot of people just don't even have any basic experience with that. So good. We're trying to get some tenant protections passed at the city level, and if successful, then the state level. It is in part of this channel and the insights from you all that made me confident enough to take action. And I just wanted to say thanks to this channel and its members. Well, thank you. And this is the beginning of the struggle. It's not the end of the fight. People just kind of getting their feet wet. So good on you for stepping out and trying something in the real world instead of just being terminally online. That's very good. All right. Also, Peak Designs is the brand of backpack Luigi was wearing. It sold out, but when the CEO went on TV and bragged about snitching, people started returning it. There you go. I'm reading Capital, just really, really slowly. There you go. Finally got my head around socially necessary labor time, I think. Yeah, socially necessary labor time is just, on average, in a society at its particular stage of development, education, technology, etc., how much work it takes to do something, basically. How many hours it takes to produce something. Because, like, you can produce woven, like a scarf today, or you could produce it 1,000 years ago, but it's going to take like a lot less time. We have advanced machinery that can pump out thousands of them, a minute now. So that's, the socially necessary labor time to produce a scarf has changed. So it's the average amount of time, of labor time that a particular society at its stage of development requires to produce a commodity. And commodity, again, being a good or service produced for exchange rather than use. The audiobook helped, thank you. Well, good. Sometimes participating in your local left leaves you with the frustrating wisdom about why the Communist Party in your country has been so ineffectual for the past 30 years, but even that's worthwhile. That's what I'm saying. That's exactly it. What I want is for you not to just believe me or take my word for it. I want you to go out, verify what I'm saying, because, hey, I could be wrong, but I want you to go out and see what the left is like there. Because then you have, a couple thousand people maybe independently who are like, yeah, this, and agreeing with others, obviously, but coordinating ideas about how the left needs to change. Absolutely. But don't take my word for that. Like, go out and look at it. See what's going right and what's going wrong in your area. Then that's, that is important and that is worthwhile. And that's exactly why I encourage it. Pretty sure Data Report got COVID from family at Christmas. See, I just would have thought he would have masked, but, that's terrible. That's terrible. The tragedy is when revisionism implants itself in a party that previously touted itself as anti-revisionist. Another reason why a strong theoretical and historical understanding is so important. Hey, Shakespeare. Yeah, so actually in the second to last reading, it's the Stalin and the British Road to Socialism by Andy Brooks. So somebody asked in the comments, who is Andy Brooks, or who was Andy Brooks? I think Andy Brooks is still alive. And Andy Brooks was a member of an anti-revisionist group, which broke away from CPGB, if I recall correctly. But then they do a lot of stuff with the Communist Party of China now and just other revisionist groups. So it's like, I don't know, maybe they feel like within the UK, they're still doing anti-revisionist stuff, even if they're touting revisionist parties internationally, because it's just like, what can you do? You can't escape the CPC. I don't know. But that's definitely a thing too, is like, it's just as easy to say you're anti-revisionist as it is to say that you're Marxist-Leninist. Doesn't make it any more true. So there's that. That's also very much a valid concern. But just read fucking Lenin. I feel like so much of this is, cleared up by reading more Lenin. That's part of it. And then I was talking with a Hojaist who was saying they consider themselves a Hojaist because Hoja, despite some errors and things, like held the line consistently in the late 20th century against modern revisionism and what would become the collapse of the socialist camp. Albania fell to that too. Hoja still had accurate observations about what was happening before and during. So, had that been more widely adopted, might have been able to, the way that the socialist camp started out in the 20th century was with a very, very big country, the former Russian Empire, becoming, under the sway of a very well organized and militant socialist movement. So it was like really off and running with a bang. But by the 70s, say, what you had was anti-revisionist groups in much smaller countries fighting against what they were calling social imperialism, of the USSR acting really kind of more in its own self-interest within the socialist camp, and clandestinely restoring capitalism, first very gradually and then very overtly in the 80s. So you had the situation of like fighting against the superpowers of the US and the USSR, which were not the same. They were not like, it's not like they were equal in the way that they were doing things, but I think the argument is more that the Soviet Union was kind of blocking, by claiming to be the sort of like be all end all and center of the socialist camp, was sort of blocking any further development of the revolution, basically. And then obviously leading everyone down the drain when it collapsed. I mean, not collapsed, but like restored capital. Like it didn't just collapse because, quote, socialism doesn't work. I mean, when it disintegrated as a political entity because they weakened socialism internally, softening it to the point where counter-revolution took over. So more complicated, and also the revisionist leadership was like arguably deliberately paving the way for that. But anyway, so you had like if you look at the parties that consider themselves Hojaist, for example, or even Maoist in the Marxist-Leninist Maoist sense, MLM, anti-revisionism, or Hojaism, which were not in agreement on some things. They were in agreement on some things like social imperialism, but not on others. Anyway, the parties that were Hojaist tend to be in much smaller countries, not dissimilar to Albania. And so they're trying to organize and do things under the shadow of both the USA and the USSR. So just like a super different situation. I think Hoja does, it is true, offer some unique insights which were not around in Lenin's time. What if you do have a big power that had a socialist revolution, then sinks back into revisionism, but like on a really more long-term, multi-decade scale? It's not just like one and done counter-revolution. It's still calling itself socialist, but it's not necessarily acting in a way that is what the international communist movement needs, let's say. And then having these more anti-revisionist parties spread in various countries in, like, say, Africa and other places, it hasn't coalesced so far, but that's still a possibility, and I think a needed one for the future. If anyone is looking to get started in organizing the Greens and DSA, just Google DSA Greens, your town or state, Action Network. Meetings and events should show up. Action Network is really useful for organizing, and I want to remind people that that's a first step. Get out there, meet people, let them get to know you, build some trust, ask if there's some other projects going on. Like, that's what's publicly viewable. That's what you can just Google. There's other projects you may not be able to Google. You might have to get to know people first. So, like, it's a real naivete when people complain about, like, I Googled, there's nothing in my area, or there's just this in my area. And it's like, well, yeah, you can't just rely on the internet. Like, you have to go pound the pavement a bit. You got to meet people. You got to, shake hands or tap elbows or whatever it is. You got to, like, get out there, get some phone numbers, like, show up to some things, suggest ideas, listen, keep your ear to the ground. So anyway, yeah. Okay, you were just being sarcastic. Fine. But no, it's important. I mean, we have to expect frustration going in. That was the person who had said that they regretted getting to know their local left was being sarcastic and venting frustration. But I mean, you have to go in expecting frustration. You know what I mean? If as a communist, like you've learned anything, it's that reformism is rife and it's really hard to hold on to an actually communist line. Go in expecting that people are just not going to be there yet, but you got to go in with like, okay, start sizing it up, making the plan. How do you intensify the class struggle over the next 5 years, working with what you got? But until you size up what you've got, map it out, you can't even make that plan. So yeah. Meet your local left for sure. It's just so abysmal in my city, and there's so much more work that needs to be done. I still got a good amount of comrades I met, and we're trying to expand. We'll see. There you go. All right, we are going to leave it there because that is our usual note about doing something in the real world that I want to leave people with in the streams and the videos and everything else. So I want to thank the many people who showed up for this stream. I want to thank again the patrons and Buy Me a Coffee supporters. And a note, if you're trying to join through Apple on the Patreon, you may not be able to do that. So use another method. Apple is trying to take like a 30% cut, I think. So Patreon is going to be, I think in September of 2025, forcing creators to accept the Apple signups. But for now, I have it turned off because they want a gigantic cut. I'll see if I can message on that, get more of the details and message on that better. But, again, in the meantime, if you want to just throw in some money, buymeacoffee.com/socialism for all. You shouldn't have that issue there. And you can do a recurring membership there as well. I think actually they take a little bit less of a cut even than Patreon does. But anyway, thanks to everybody for showing up to help make this what it is. And probably when we do this again soon, maybe even next week, we'll do more articles and things like that. But like I said at the top of the stream, when I haven't streamed in a while, it's usually a good idea to just like vent and chat. And then the next time, like, people come in more ready to like listen to stuff than, talking. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you in the next video.